Hello, hello, hello. This is your Bible Big Brother Christian. Thank you for joining us again for day number 23 in our journey through the ESV Study Bible through a year. We have been going through the Pentateuch, the Old Testament. We have gone through Genesis. We are currently making our way through the book of Exodus. Today we will be looking at Exodus chapter 13 to 15. I'll give us a recap. Then we'll read the scriptures. Then we'll go through the ESV Study Bible notes. And then we'll finish off today with the history of salvation verses in the back of the book. All right. So where we've been. Start off in the beginning during the creation week. And then we took a magnified view of what happened on day 6 as God created man and woman out of the dust of the ground. And then he placed them inside of the Garden of Eden. But there was a fall, disobedience, and that caused God to kick them out of the garden. And from there, there was cursing, but with the cursing came a sliver of hope, a promise that from the woman would come an offspring that would crush the head of the serpent, but the serpent would bite his heel. And we have been searching for that offspring ever since through the book of Genesis, trying to see who's the offspring that will come and reverse the curse. From there, we go and go through a few different people, through a few different genealogies, but we come to a young man named Abram, who was living in Mesopotamia at the time, but God invites him to go to leave there, leave his father and his kindred and go to a land that God will show him. So God brings him to the land of Canaan. And from there, God promises him that he would have children who would outnumber the stars and would outnumber the sand of the sea and the dust of the earth. And that he would give that land that he was sojourning in, Canaan, that he would give that to his descendants. But first, before he gave them that land, they would go to a land that they did not know and be there and be servants, slaves for 400 years. But God would bring them out with great possessions and then bring them back to the land of Canaan for it to be theirs. He said they would do all this so that from him uh, would come descendants or a descendant that will be a blessing to all the earth. And so we follow his descendants from Isaac to Jacob, and Jacob, who has 12 sons. Of those 12 sons, his favorite is his 11th son, Joseph. He is the oldest of two boys of his favorite wife. And because Jacob has much favor on him, his brothers don't take too kindly to that. So because of that, Joseph's brothers plan to murder him. But they decide against murdering him and instead sell him into slavery. And from selling him into slavery, he gets down to Egypt. From there, through a series of ups and downs, he finds himself in front of the Pharaoh of Egypt. And being in front of the Pharaoh of Egypt, the Pharaoh is impressed with his wisdom and raises him to be the second in command in all of Israel. And Joseph comes up with a scheme to save grain during the 7 good years. And then in the 7 years of famine, they would have enough not only to feed themselves, but to feed the known world at the time. And so he does this. And during the 7 years of the lean years, during the famine, people from around the known world come to buy grain from him. And then his brothers come to buy grain as well. Through a series of events, um, uh, he convinces his father and the rest of his family to come and live in Egypt. And then there is a total of 70 of the people in Jacob's house who was renamed Israel. So you have 70 Israelites that come and stay total in the land of Egypt and the land of Goshen. From there, we are told that um, uh, as Joseph dies, that he would love for his descendants to keep his bones, do not bury them in Egypt, but to hold on to them until God brings them to the land that he had promised them, to the land of Canaan. Now, some time goes by and there arises a new Pharaoh in Egypt who did not know Joseph, and so did not have a relationship with the people that allowed the greatness and wealth and prestige of Egypt to happen. And so he saw the Israelites as a problem. And so he tried to subdue them and make them servants, make them slaves. And he was harsh toward them. But the harsher that he got, the more they multiplied. And so he decided that he was going to go on a killing spree of the boys of the Israelites because he was afraid that they would tag team up with one of Egypt's enemies and then fight against Egypt. Little did he know, he had other adversaries to worry about, and that was the women under his nose, whether the women of Israel or his own daughter. One day, one of the Israelite women of the tribe of Levi has a son and does all she can to hide him. But then when he is too old to hide, she places him in a basket on the Nile River, and he floats down to where Pharaoh's daughter is bathing. And she sees him. Pharaoh's daughter sees the little baby and immediately wants to keep him. So she keeps him, raises him herself, and then he grows up and has a few identity issues where he grows up in an Egyptian home but knows he is a Hebrew. And so one day he is out and he sees an Egyptian and a Hebrew fighting each other. And he decides that he's going to kill the Egyptian and associate himself with his people. From there, Pharaoh gets wind of his murder. He decides to flee to the land of Midian. There he meets his father-in-law, Ruel, and marries his daughter, Zipporah. And then while he is there, he is tending his sheep and he sees a bush burning and decides to go and see, why this bush is not burning up, even though it is inflamed. From there, he has a conversation with God, and God commissions him to go back to Egypt and to negotiate the release of the Israelites from Pharaoh. And God gives him a few different signs to show Pharaoh that would help him with his negotiation tactics. But ultimately says that Pharaoh will end up hardening his heart and that God himself would have to force him with a strong hand to allow his people to go. So then Moses heads back to Egypt, holds court with Pharaoh, and there begins a series of signs and plagues on the part of Aaron, Moses' brother, God and Moses. And then from there, Pharaoh finally relents and lets the Israelites go. Um, and the last and greatest plague was the killing of all the firstborn uh, sons of the Egyptians. The Israelites themselves were saved, and we found out yesterday the Israelites and maybe others that participated were saved from the death angel killing their firstborn, as long as they participated in a ritual called the Passover, where they took a unblemished lamb, roasted it over a fire, took his blood and put his blood over over the doorpost. And as long as they did that, the death angel passed them and did not kill their firstborn. And so from that, they were protected. And that very night, Pharaoh decided, hey, you guys have to go. And with that, not only did they leave, but their Egyptian counterparts, their Egyptian neighbors, willingly gave them possessions to take with them so that they can leave. From there, they leave from Ramses and go to Succoth. And that is where they are now. And the Lord gives them instructions on further Passovers for them to do with both their progeny and with others who decide to come and live among them. And so that sets us up for what we have today. They are to journey to the mountain that God met Moses on, Mount Horeb or Mount Sinai, but they are yet to be there. And we also, too, want to see what will happen with Pharaoh. Time and time again, he made a decision and wavered on it. I want to see, hey, will he waver on his decision again to let the people go? And so that sets us up for today, Exodus chapter 13 to chapter 15. And we will go ahead and get started. We'll move the verse numbers and see what we got. All right. Exodus chapter 13 to chapter 15. The Lord said to Moses, consecrate to me all the firstborn. Whatever is the first to open the womb among the people of Israel, both of man and of beast, is mine. Then Moses said to the people, remember this day in which you came out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. For by a strong hand the Lord brought you out from this place. No leavened bread shall be eaten. Today, in the month of Abib, you are going out. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall keep this service in this month. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a feast to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, and no leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory. You shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. And it shall be to you as a sign on your hand and as a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this statute at its appointed time from year to year. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb, all the first of your animals that are male shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. Or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn man among your sons you shall redeem. And when in time to come, your son, and when in time to come, your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of animals. Therefore, I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first opened the womb. With all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall be as a mark on your hand, or frontlets between your eyes. For by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea. And the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt, equipped for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones with you from here. And they moved on from Succoth and encamped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of Pi Hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea, in front of Baal Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his hosts. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. And they did so. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed toward the people. And they said, what is this? What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us? So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel while the people of Israel were going out defiantly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, encamped at the sea by Pi Hahiroth in front of Baal Zephon. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. And Moses said to the people, fear not, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the people of Israel may go through the sea on dry ground. And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they shall go in after them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his hosts, his chariots and his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten glory over Pharaoh, his chariots and his horsemen. Then the angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night without one coming near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Egyptians pursued and went in after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and of cloud looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels, so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course when the morning appeared. And as the Egyptians fled into it, the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen of all the hosts of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained, but the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians. So the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. Then Moses and the people of Israel sang this song to the Lord, saying, "I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. This is my God. I will praise him, for my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his hosts he cast into the sea, and his chosen officers were sunk in the Red Sea. The floods covered them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shadows the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you overthrow your adversaries. You send out your fury. It consumes them like stubble. At the blast of your nostrils, the waters piled up. The floods stood up in a heap. The deeps congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire shall have its fill of them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them. You blew with your wind. The sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glorious deeds, doing wonders? You stretched out your right hand. The earth swallowed them. You have led in your steadfast love the people whom you have redeemed. You have guided them by your strength to your holy abode. The peoples have heard, they tremble. Pangs have seized the inhabitants of Philistia. Now are the chiefs of Edom dismayed. Trembling ceases the leaders of Moab and the inhabitants of Canaan. All the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away. Terror and dread fall upon them because of the greatness of my arm. They are still as a stone till your people, O Lord, pass by, till the people pass by whom you have purchased. You will bring them in and plant them on your own mountain, and the place, O Lord, which you have made for your abode, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands have established. The Lord will reign forever and ever. For when the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and the horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought back the waters of the sea upon them. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground in the midst of the sea. Then Miriam, prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her in tambourines and dancing. And Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea." Then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea. And they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days into the wilderness and found no water. And they came to Marah. They could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" And he cried to the Lord. And the Lord showed him a log, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made for them a statute and a rule. And there he tested them, saying, "If you will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and do that which is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord, your healer." Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the water. This is the word of the Lord. Okay, let's get to the notes. Chapter 13, verses 1 to 16. As the Passover in chapter 12, verses 1 to 27, looks forward to Israel's life in the land, these verses call the people of Israel to faithfulness in celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Chapter 13, verses 3 to 10, and consecrating all their firstborn. Verse 2 and verses 11 to 16. Chapter 13, verse 2. In addition to the yearly sacrifice of the Passover, see chapter 12, verses 1 to 13, all Israel is also called to consecrate to the Lord all the firstborn in Israel, whether animal or human. The instructions for how and why this is to be carried out are given in chapter 13, verses 11 to 16. This reminds Israel that when the Egyptian firstborn died in the 10th plague, the Israelites were spared. Verse 15. Consecrate means make holy by giving to God. Thus, the firstborn of sacrificial animals, such as sheep and cattle, had to be sacrificed. However, firstborn donkeys and humans had to be redeemed. A lamb was offered and sacrificed instead of them. Wow, okay, let me see something. Okay. Oh, wow, I didn't even notice that with the donkey deal. Okay, what verse is this? Uh, okay, verse 13. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. Yeah, so there's a distinction between the animals. When the Lord brings you into the land of Canaan as you swore, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb, all the firstborn of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Okay. So there's a distinction between what happens between all the animals and then the donkey and human sons. Good deal. I didn't notice the donkey thing, but good stuff. All right, chapter 3. Oh, wait. No, we're not done this. No. No, we did. All right. Chapter 13, verse 3. The repeated statement that the Lord brought his people out by a strong hand, also in verses 9, 14, and 16, frames the instruction of this section and acts as the grounds upon which Israel is called to be faithful in keeping both the Feast of Unleavened Bread, verses 3 and 9, and the consecration of all the firstborn, verses 14 and 16, as a reminder of the Lord's power. It also seems intended to encourage Israel to fear the Lord and not the nations who inhabit the land of Canaan. See verses 5 to 11. Chapter 13, verse 5. The instructions of verses 2 to 16 focus on the time when the Lord will bring Israel into the land of the Canaanites. Also, verse 11, with the repeated statement that the Lord brought Israel out of Egypt by a strong hand. See verse 3. Moses encourages Israel to see that faithfulness to these two statutes is a part of being formed to fear the Lord and not the nations who inhabit the land. Chapter 13, verses 6 to 7. These instructions relate to the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is initiated by the celebration of the Passover and is observed for 7 days. Chapter 13, verse 8. Israel is called once again to see, it's called once again, see chapter 12, verse 26, not only to faithfully participate in the statutes of the Lord, but also to tell their children what they mean. You shall tell your son on that day. All right. Again, this is a very important point. And I actually was listening to Carmen Joy Imes's commentary on this earlier. And she made the point that we see this repeated thing because there's a reality that, you know, faith in God is just one generation away. Right. And I've talked about Pastor Bodie Bacham before on here, and I linked to a sermon that he did. But something I think he used to always stress is when I listen to him is how important it is to repeatedly preach the gospel, because the gospel itself must be handed down to the next generation. That it can be lost from one generation to the next. So we have a responsibility to hand it down to our children. Chapter 13, verse 9. The Lord's statutes were to be so normative and governing for life in Israel that they would be like marks on your hand and between your eyes. Also, verse 16. In a wordplay related to the part of the body responsible for both eating and speaking, the mouth. Faithfulness is described as having the result that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. That is, you will always be saying it to yourself and teaching your children. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 7, and Psalm chapter 1, verse 2. The law of the Lord, I think this is the first time law is used. I think at least the word Torah. Yeah, we good. Daughter-in-law, son-in-law, my commandments and my laws. Father-in-law, father-in-law. There should be one law for the natives. Okay. Okay, at least the phrase law of the Lord. Law of the Lord. Let's see. Let's go to Bible Hub and take a look at it real quick. Hub.com. Oh, sorry. Bible Hub. Exodus 13. Okay, let's go to interlinear. Hateful problem. Torah. All right, so we have those three places. So statutes in my Torah, Genesis, the same Torah should apply. And then the Torah of the Lord, the Torah of Yahweh. Okay, good deal. I do think it's interesting, right? So let's head back to chapter 13. Okay. All right. Let's all right. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Starting verse 6. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there should be a feast to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, and no leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory. You should tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. And it shall be to you as a sign on your hand and as a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. All right. And for here, we haven't really even gotten the law. So, like, this festival reminder is to help them remember the law that they haven't even gotten yet. Right. And I spoke before about how I heard Carmen Iams speak about uh, the order of salvation and then obedience to the law. How it is not until after they are saved that the Lord begins to give them the law. So not only are they saved, they are saved, and then they are given a yearly feast to pause and reflect upon what God has done, to both remember what He has done and to remember the law that He has at this point He has yet to give them. All right. Yeah. So I think that again speaks to what the Lord is most desirous of, how He operates. All right. That He saves them, gives them a feast, a yearly feast to do. Hey, have this week-long party, remembering what I have done for you, and then remember the law. Right? So, good deal. Okay, chapter 13, verses 11 to 16. Set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. Verse 12. This was another way in which Israel's pattern of everyday life was to reflect the fact that they were the people that the Lord had brought out of Egypt. See also chapter 34, verses 19 to 20. Every firstborn was regarded as belonging to the Lord. Firstborn animals were to be sacrificed, redeemed by the sacrifice of another animal, or killed. Chapter 13, verses 12 to 15. Firstborn children were to be redeemed, verse 13, by the sacrifice of a lamb. Like the Passover, see chapter 12, verse 26, and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, chapter 13, verses 8 to 9. Parents who were to be faithful in both doing and the telling of consecration. And when in time to come your sons ask, what does this mean? You shall say, right? And then, give um, uh, uh, they're given the words to say to their children about what the Lord has done. All right, chapter 13, verse 17. Although the Lord has clearly shown through the plagues that he can bring his people victoriously through the land of the Philistines, he mercifully chooses to take them on another route that will not lead to immediate armed conflict. However, this route will result in Israel being hemmed in between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army of chariots. See chapter 15, verses 5 to 9, and will call them to a different sort of challenge before the Lord calls Israel to trust that he will fight through them, as he will do with the Amalekites in chapter 17, verses 8 to 16. He will show them once again how he will fight for them. See chapter 14, verses 13 to 14, right? And I mean, this speaks to the trust that one must have in the Lord, right? That he may do things that seemingly are scary or that seem awful to us, right? But again, as we have spoken about his sovereignty, he is doing it and working things out for his particular purposes, right? So as we read earlier, and as we'll see, there are two reasons for him coming this way. Reason number one, to protect them from the Philistines. Hey, I just saved you from the Egyptians. I'm not going to save you from the Egyptians for you to now have to go face the Philistines. We're not going to do that yet. Yeah, we haven't had enough time to prepare for the war that you would have to have against these people. So no, I'm not going to do that to you, right? So I'm going to protect you in this way. Also, too, I'm gonna have a double whammy where I protect you from the Philistines, but also too, I protect you from Pharaoh and let you know that you're never going to see this Pharaoh again. I want you to see me take him down. And in seeing me take him down, I want you to never forget the power that I have over the evil that tries to come and overtake you. And in the meantime, I'm going to judge Pharaoh. Right. So that second part with Pharaoh, it has a lot of components to it. All right. So, this should be a and I would say as we go along in the desert with the Israelites, this should train us in trusting the Lord, right? That when we come up to something that seems awful, that not just seems awful, is awful, right? Let our first instincts be, Lord, I trust you. I have come to this thing, and you are doing something. I don't know what it is you're doing, but I trust you in it. All right. So let this help to train you in your trust of God, right? So that the next time, you get taken off course, Lord, I trust you. The next time you get to a place where it seems that resources have run out, Lord, I trust you. All right. Chapter 13, verse 18. Toward the Red Sea. In the accounts of the crossing of the sea, chapter 15, verse 4, Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 4, Psalm 106, verses 7, 9, and 22. The water is often referred to as Yam Suk, which is also the Hebrew phrase in this verse. Some modern scholars interpret Yam Suk as a sea of reeds / papyrus because the term soup refers to the reeds growing along the Nile River, Exodus chapter 2, verse 3. Because papyrus does not grow along the Red Sea / Gulf of Suez, some scholars have concluded that Yam Suk is one of the marshy lakes in the eastern delta region north of the Red Sea. Support for this is claimed from the Egyptian document Papyrus Anastasis III, which describes a papyrus lake not far from the city of Ramses that could be identified with Yam Suk of the Exodus account. Many scholars have concluded from this that the Israelites crossed a marshy area of a lake rather than a large body of water such as the Red Sea. Other scholars disagree, proposing that Suk is not related to the Egyptian word papyrus, but rather to a word that means end, Hebrew suk. And thus, the Yam Suk would literally mean the sea of the end. That is, the sea at the end of the lake of Egypt. At the sea at the end of the land of Egypt. That is the Red Sea. The Septuagint translates Yam Suk into Greek as Tin Erythran the Lausanne, literally the Red Sea, here and elsewhere. In addition, every certain reference to Yam Suk in the Bible refers to the Red Sea or its northern extensions in the Gulfs of Aqaba and Suez. For example, 1 Kings chapter 9, verse 26, and Jeremiah 49, verse 21. This suggests that the name Yam Suk is best understood to denote the Red Sea / Gulf of Suez, and therefore the Israelites crossed this major body of water when they fled Egypt. Okay, so this little introduction to debate among scholars of where actually did they cross, and what actually did they cross. And so, yeah, so there's debate there, and so we've been given some information on the debate. Chapter 13, verse 19. Taking the bones of Joseph, carried out his last wishes in Genesis chapter 50, verses 24 to 25. It reaffirmed for Israel that God had kept the promises he made so long before. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 22 sees Joseph's desire to be buried in the promised land as evidence of his faith in God's future blessings, including a better country that is a heavenly one. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 16, cross-reference Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, verse 10, verses 13 to 16, and verses 39 and 40. Man, I'll say this. The more that we go on in the Old Testament, you know, it might do you well to, as we go, maybe even to make that a daily reading, like before we click on and listen to, you know, what's happening with the ESV Study Bible series here that we're doing, especially in the Old Testament. You know, maybe go back and read Hebrews 11, like on a daily basis, right? And then you can connect, you know, the brief statements that are made in Hebrews 11 to what is happening in real time with the characters that it highlights, and you can see in real time the faith that they have, and how that how you should connect to that faith, right? Chapter 13, verses 21 and 22. Throughout the events of Exodus, cloud and fire accompany and signify the presence of the Lord at the burning bush, chapter 3, verse 2, giving the people manna, chapter 16, verse 10, on Mount Sinai, chapter 19, verse 18, and in the tabernacle, chapter 40, verse 38. All right, chapter 14. Moving along, man, moving along. Whoa, whoa, too big. All right. Notes for chapter 14, verses 1 to 31, with statements that echo his words to Moses before the plagues, verses 4, 8, 17, 18, chapter 4, verse 21, chapter 7, verse 3 to 5. The Lord indicates that the coming events are governed by his power and purposes. Although the Lord tells Moses that he will get glory over Pharaoh, chapter 14, verse 4, he does not tell him just how Israel will be delivered. Between the time of the plagues in Egypt, chapter 7, verse 14, and chapter 12, verse 32, and the journey to Sinai, chapter 15, verse 22, and chapter 18, verse 27, the events at the Red Sea show Moses as a maturing leader who trusts the word of the Lord. See chapter 14, verses 13 and 14. As they also illustrate Israel's need to do the same. See verses 10 to 12. Chapter 14, verse 2. The body of water that Israel is about to cross is called the Red Sea. And chapter 13, verse 18, and chapter 15, verse 4, and is referred to simply as the sea in this section. The exact route of the Exodus is uncertain, but it is likely that they crossed the Red Sea at its northern end. See map on page 143. So let's see. Let me see if I can grab the map real quick so I can put it on the screen. Mm-hmm. All right, sorry about that. All right, it should be getting moved over. Okay. All right, let's see. Oh, let's see. All right, here we go. Here we go. All right. So, all right. So we were in Ramses. We went to Pithom and Succoth. Okay. Then they're going through the wilderness of Shur. Right. So it is. Okay. This must be the body of water that they were thinking might have been what they crossed. But here's where the ESV Study Bible scholars believe they cross here at the top tip of the Red Sea. Okay. Where some think they went this northern route over this small body of water here. So, all right. Okay. All right, let's get back to the notes in chapter 14. chapter 14, verse 4. The content of this verse is repeated nearly verbatim in the narrative, verses 17 to 18, and echoes the Lord's words to Moses, both before and during the plagues. I will harden Pharaoh's heart. Cross-reference chapter 4, verse 21, chapter 7, verse 3, etc. I will get glory over Pharaoh. Cross-reference chapter 7, verse 16. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. Cross-reference chapter 7, verse 5. Right? So God is establishing his power. Okay. Pharaoh is trying to battle with the Lord. The Lord is going to defeat him. Not only that, the Egyptians will also know that he is Yahweh. Not only will the Egyptians know, but the Israelites will know. And as we will see later, surrounding nations and peoples will know, because they will hear of what the Lord did. Chapter 14, verse 5. When the Egyptians refer to letting Israel go by saying, "What is this we have done?" they exhibit the hardness of heart that the Lord said he would bring about. See verses 4, 8, 17. The question also resembles the way Israel will wrongly attribute their circumstances to Moses in the face of Egypt's pursuit, verse 11. This is true, right? So you see, the Egyptians ask, "What is this we have done?" And then we see up here in verse 11, they ask Moses, "What have you done to us?" Chapter 14, verse 7. The possession of chariots represents a significant advantage in ancient Near Eastern warfare. Egypt was proficient in the use of chariots, as indicated by the distinction of 600 chosen chariots, in addition to all the others. Pharaoh was coming out against what appeared to be a wandering and trapped nation with its most prestigious and imposing force. I think it's something important, right? Like, if you are encountering and reading this story for the first time, this seems like impossible circumstances, right? Hey, you have the greatest army in the world, in the known world at the time, coming up against people who just stayed up all night trying to, travel. And they're just walking out with their families and their livestock, and they're hemmed in between certain death at the sea or certain death by the known world at that time, the greatest army. Right? Hey, impossible situation. It's going to happen. Right? And the Lord saves them. Chapter 14, verse 10. The reference to Israel seeing Egypt's army and fearing greatly is thematic for this section. Though the plagues and continuing on their journey to Sinai, through the plagues and continuing on their journey to Sinai, Yahweh calls Israel to fear him over any other nation or battle force. See verses 13 to 31. Exactly. We talked about that a few days ago, or our first day on Exodus, where we talked about the fear of God, and that it is a genuine fear of him, fearing him over fearing the other nations, right? And then a part of that fear is acknowledging his power. So, so this they should do. Chapter 14, verse 11. What have you done to us? Note this similar mistake that the Egyptians make with reference to their own actions, verse 5. This incident between the people and Moses was prefaced by earlier events, chapter 2, verse 14, chapter 5, verse 21, and also prefigures those to come, chapter 15, verse 24, chapter 16, verse 2, chapter 17, verse 3. chapter 14, verse 12. When the people of Israel say, it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. They are viewing their circumstances without reference to the fact that the Lord himself brought them to this place. As revealed throughout Israel's history, the Lord is merciful in never leaving his people simply to themselves or to their circumstances, as both Daniel and his three friends will later assert. See Daniel chapter 3, verse 16 and 18, chapter 6, verse 10. All right. And for those who don't know it or do not remember it, this is God saving Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the fiery furnace. Right? They go in believing that the Lord will save them. And then also, too, Daniel being saved from the lion's den. Right? God repeatedly does this for them. And it is recorded for them to know. And so, in looking and weighing their circumstances, they're like, hey, this or slavery, we take slavery instead of trusting the Lord. Whatever the Lord calls his people to face as a result of fearing him is, in fact, better than simply remaining alive. Come on now. Come on now. Whatever the Lord calls his people to face as a result of fearing him is, in fact, better than simply remaining alive. I remember when I first really read through the book of Exodus, I was baffled by how many times they desired to go back into slavery because freedom was too hard. Oh my goodness. It also reminds me of if you never heard of in the 1930s, President Roosevelt at the time commissioned a team of people to interview former American slaves. So this was like the last generation of former slaves alive in America, and so he sent out a commission to interview as many of them as they could. And there's thousands, tens of thousands of interviews that they did. And so I went through. I have not read all of them, but I've read a good bit. At least 1,000, maybe 2,000 of the interviews there. And at that time it was the Great Depression, right? And so I was baffled by two things. One, the the conditions that that they often repeated about what slavery was like for them. For the most part, was different than what we see in the movies. There were some that like, okay, this is consistent with what I've seen in movies, but those are very far through between. But the other thing that baffled me is how often. Man, like at least 25% of them, at least around about 20-25%, would speak about how it was better because at least we had food. That was so often, right? Now it could have been just because of they're going through the Great Depression. They're food is scarce for everybody at the time. For a large swath of the nation, and so they could be doing the same thing as the Egyptians are doing here, right? Where it's like, man, whether this or that, then I'll take that, You know, at least I had, this, versus this or this condition that I'm in right now, right? That I'm not liking, right? So I'll take that condition, even though I didn't like that condition. It was better than what I have right now. So, um, so yeah. Um, but uh, freedom is a hard thing. Freedom is a hard thing. Um, there's the trope, or I don't say the trope, but the common phrase, freedom ain't free. People say, um, and there is some truth to that. And so I think we'll see uh, throughout the Old Testament, there are times where the Israelites have a sort of freedom that God has given them, even once they get into the land of the Canaanites. But they continuously call for more and uh, they continue to call for less freedom, and where they try to trade in their freedom for security, right? And I will say that's a part of the human condition, because I think that's something that we do ourselves today, where uh, we'll trade in freedoms for security. Yeah, so I don't want to get too far into that because, like I said, it's going to be a few times going through the scripture before we get into application on a wider scale. So, all right, chapter 14, verse 13. Fear not. Israel is being called once again not to fear any other nation or circumstance. See verse 10. But to fear the Lord. See verse 31. Chapter 14, verses 17 to 18. References to the Lord getting glory over Pharaoh. See also verse 4. Come on either side of the statement that the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord. Although the plagues have continually revealed that the Lord and not Pharaoh is due honor, the victory over Pharaoh's chariots in the Red Sea will be known powerfully in Egypt and throughout the surrounding nations. See chapter 9, verse 16, and chapter 15, verses 14 to 16. The angel of God, we went over the angel of God when we looked at the burning bush. So that's, sorry, the note here is chapter 15, verse 19. So to review that content, go back to the first day of the Exodus reading. Okay. Chapter 14, verse 22. 22. All right. The image of the waters as a wall is a vivid indication of the protection given by the water on each side. Cross reference 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 16, and Jeremiah chapter 15, verse 20. The text presents the event as a demonstration of the Lord's great power. Exodus chapter 14, verse 31, including how the waters returned and covered the chariots and horsemen of Egypt. Verse 28. Thus, the text is clear that this is not a purely natural event. Similar events will take place when Joshua leads Israel across the Jordan into the land of Canaan. Joshua chapter 3, verses 14 and 17. When Elijah and Elisha crossed the Jordan together on the way to Elijah being taken. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 8. And when Elisha returns across the Jordan alone. 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 14. Chapter 14, verse 31. They believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses, since the Lord had chosen Moses as the one through whom he will reveal his word. It is necessary for Israel to learn to follow Moses as a consequence of learning to fear the Lord. See verses 10 to 13. All right. Notes on chapter 15. Chapter 15, verses 1 to 21. This section includes a celebration of the Lord's deliverance in song, verses 1 to 18, followed by the women playing tambourines and dancing, and Miriam singing the first lines of the song, verses 19 to 21. Chapter 15, verses 1 to 18. The song of praise is a celebration of the triumph over Pharaoh's army in the Red Sea as representative of the Lord's power and rule. It is similar to other songs or psalms in both the Old Testament and New Testament that celebrate particular events that reveal God's character. For example, Deborah and Barak's song in response to victory over Sisera and Jabin of Canaan, Judges chapter 5, verses 1 to 31. Hannah's song at the birth of Samuel, chapter 1, First Samuel, chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. Mary's response to the angel's news and Elizabeth's greeting, Luke chapter 1, verses 46 to 55, and Zechariah's prophecy after the birth of John the Baptist, Luke chapter 1, verses 68 to 79, right? So this is a repeated thing that happens where God does something great and miraculous, and then there is a celebratory song or poem that comes after. All right. One thing, now that I think about it, I don't think, did they discuss? Hold on one second. Let me see something. I don't think we discussed the pillar of fire and cloud. Did we discuss it? Okay. All right. They just made a reference to it there at the end of chapter 13, verse 22. Okay. I'm sorry about this. This is gonna when we do the chapter breaks, it's gonna kind of mess up it's gonna kind of mess up the deal there, but this is what we have to deal with as we build it as we fly. So sorry about that. Let's do this. Okay. 21 and 22, and then let's see. Then 19 to 25. Okay. All right. Because I want to show you guys something. 15, 19 to 25. Okay. And then also we want to go to Genesis. I think it's at 15. Okay. Yep. Let's go chapter verses. Sundown. Okay. All right. So let's go 12 to the end of the chapter. All right. So we'll just start reading here. Okay. Sorry about the break there. Okay. All right. No, we'll start in chapter 7. All right. So this is God speaking to Abram at the time, right? So Genesis chapter 15, we'll start in verse 7. And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. And he said, O Lord God, how am I to know that I shall possess it? He said to him, bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he brought him all these, cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other. Right? So cut them in half. We spoke about this at the time, right? Where this was a common practice during the day, where contracts were kind of sealed and signed in this way, where two parties would set up animals on either side and create like a little walkway through, and they would walk through saying, hey, if I don't uphold my end of the bargain, I should be like these animals, right? So he sets this up. Verse 11, and when birds of prey came down on the carcass, Abram drove them away. All right, now verse 12. As the sun goes down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, and behold, dreadful and great darkness fell upon him. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age, and they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. Okay? Flaming fire pot, right? So you have basically smoke and then a flame go through the splitting thing, right? And they're going through as he is making a covenant with him about not only his offspring, right? The promised offspring, so the offspring that he's going to have through Isaac, but then his later descendants, right? His later descendants that are going to go to a land, right? Which you find out the land is Egypt. They're going to be servants there, right? Which have been. They've been afflicted for 400 years. And God's going to bring judgment on the nation, right? Which he's done with the plagues, right? And they're going to come out with great possessions, which they have. Now watch how Moses seals this. And the Lord went before them in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night a pillar of fire, flaming torch and fiery pot. All right, leading them through the wilderness. Not only leading them through the wilderness, right, and say do this so they might travel by day and by night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from them before the people. Moving on to chapter 14, starting in verse 19. The angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night, without one coming near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back. So by a strong east wind all night, it made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. and the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea on dry ground. Right now, we get another divide. Right, so Abram divided the carcasses, made it alleyway so that they could, fulfill the contract. Right, but instead of Abram walking through, he sleeps. Well, God does both walking through. Right, through the flame and the cloud of smoke. Right, and here we go. Now the waters are divided. The people are walking through. Okay, and the people of Israel went in the midst of the sea on dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on their right hand and their left. The Egyptians pursued and went after them in the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's forces, his chariots, and his horsemen. And in the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and of cloud looked down on the Egyptian forces and threw the Egyptian forces into a panic, clogging their chariot wheels, so that they drove heavily. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from before Israel, for the Lord fights for them against the Egyptians." Okay, so you have the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire going through the waters, going through the split, and fulfilling his promise that he made to Abram. It's like he puts a bow on it. Hey, I made this promise. I'm going through. I'm fulfilling this promise now, at least major parts of it. I'm going to go through again. I think it's fascinating how that's done. So I think it's cool. I don't know why they didn't put that in there, but I think it's cool to look at and see God's faithfulness. Okay, where were we? Yeah, goodness. Chapter 15. Which one were we on? Okay, we did the songs. All right. Chapter 15, verse 1. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. The drowning of Pharaoh's army by the hand of the Lord is the central event celebrated by the song, and it is referred to with various images. Cast into the sea and sunk in the Red Sea, verse 4. Floods covered them, and they went down like a stone, verse 5. The sea covered them, and they sank like lead, verse 10. The earth swallowed them, verse 12, right? So this victory that the Lord has over Pharaoh, that's like the huge point of the psalm. Chapter 15, verse 2. The singular reference to my father's God echoes the Lord's words to Moses at the burning bush, which indicate that this phrase refers to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, chapter 3, verse 6, and equips Israel also to say of him, "This is my God." Come on, somebody. And then chapter 15, verse 4, it refers to the note that we talked about regarding the Red Sea. Right, so if you're just listening to chapter 15, refer back to the section in chapter 13. All right. Chapter 15, verse 6. The reference to the Lord's right hand, verse 12, cross-reference verse 16, takes up God's words to Moses describing the means by which Israel would come out of Egypt. See chapter 6, verse 1, chapter 7, verses 4 to 5. Chapter 15, verse 9. While the words of the enemy refer, first of all, to the actions of the Egyptians, pursue, overtake. See chapter 14, verse 9, who intended to bring Israel back to serve as slaves. See chapter 14, verse 5. They also extend beyond the particular events of the Red Sea and are representative of the pride and desire of any adversary of the Lord and his people. That is, divide the spoil, destroy. In chapter 15, verse 11, in light of the events that have taken place, the rhetorical questions of this verse imply that there is no one among the gods of the nations like the Lord. See also chapter 12, verse 12, and chapter 20, verse 3. In a similar song, Hannah proclaims the complementary answers to the questions of this verse. There is none holy like the Lord. There is none beside you. There is no rock like our God. 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 2. Let's read this verse real quick. Oh, man. All right. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? And they're saying Hannah is referring back to this and answering, right? So let's look at that. Let's look at that together. That's pretty cool. Exodus 15:11, 1 Samuel 2, verse 2. Okay. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Hannah answers, there is none holy like the Lord. Who is like you, majestic in holiness? For there is none beside you, awesome and glorious deeds, doing wonders. There is no rock like our God. So, yeah. So, who is like you, majestic in holiness? So I would say, if I had to do it, it would be more like, who is like you, majestic in holiness? There is none holy like the Lord. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? For there is none beside you. Awesome and glorious deeds, doing wonders. There is no rock like our God. That's pretty cool, though. That lines up that way. So, making connections, man, connecting the whole Torah, the whole scriptures all together. All right. Come on, man. Who is like you? None compares. There's no one like our God. Great and grateful to be praised. Here we go. Chapter 15, verses 13 to 18. These verses, like the song as a whole, see verse 9, describe Israel's journey out of Egypt and into the land of Canaan. They anticipate the fear that will befall the surrounding peoples, the Philistines, Edomites, and Moabites, as well as the Canaanites. Your own mountain, the place you have made for your abode, verse 17. In one sense, the whole hilly country of Canaan is to be God's dwelling, but his abode may be more specific, a more specific reference to the hill of Jerusalem, where God's temple will stand. Chapter 15, verse 13, redeemed. This term refers to God's dealing for the sake of his people, rescuing them from danger and fostering conditions in which their faithfulness may flourish. Cross-reference chapter 6, verse 6, Psalm chapter 74, verse 2, chapter 77, verse 15, chapter 106, verse 10, Isaiah chapter 52, verse 9, chapter 62, verse 12. See note on Isaiah chapter 41, verse 14. Chapter 15, verse 16, purchased. An image for the way that God acquired his people through great deeds. Cross-reference Psalm chapter 74, verse 2. Chapter 15, verse 21. Miriam leads the women in singing a verse that repeats the first verse of the song. See verse 1. All right, so Moses sings, then Miriam comes and gets all the ladies together, right? And get the women's choir, put it together, make it happen. All right, finishing up. great and grateful to be praised. Da, 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 da. Hallelujah, our God reigns. Man, got a song in my heart. Got a song in my heart now, man. Reading the scriptures, man. You know, sorry I can't really sing that well, but reading Moses' song, brings our modern day version brings it up uh, in my heart there. All right, chapter 15, verse 22 to chapter 18, verse 27. Journey. Israel journeys from Egypt to Rephidim and responds to difficulties like the need for water, chapter 15, verses 22 to 27, chapter 17, verses 1 to 7, and food, chapter 16, verses 1 to 36. The narrative also includes two difficult situations the people faced while encamped at Rephidim. See chapter 17, verse 1. We'll see that tomorrow. The external attack by another nation, chapter 17, verse 8. And the internal question of how to help the people make decisions according to the Lord's statutes, chapter 18, verses 1 to 27. For Rephidim, Israel will make their final short journey to the wilderness of Sinai. See chapter 19, verse 2. Chapter 15, verses 22 to 27, water problem, Marah. The people of Israel respond to a lack of water at Marah in a manner similar to their grumbling against Moses at the Red Sea, chapter 14, verses 10 to 12. Correct. All right. As I was reading, I was like, man, I'm reading the same thing over and over again. Yeah. They do not yet trust the Lord's presence with them is sufficient for their protection and provision, which will be a recurring struggle in the journey to Sinai. See chapter 16, verses 2 to 3. Chapter 17, verses 2 to 3. And ultimately lead to the situation through which this generation of Israel will not be allowed to enter Canaan. Numbers chapter 14, verses 1 to 4. Got to trust the Lord. Let's see. Okay. Chapter 15, verse 22 to 24. With the large number of people and livestock coming out of Egypt, see chapter 12, verses 37 and 38, the inability to find drinkable water is a significant problem. Okay? Hey, it's not saying there's no issue now. This is real deal. Real deal Holyfield. Right? But in the midst of real problems, what is going to be our default position? All right? Are we going to see the problem and make that be an excuse for wrong action or excuse for lack of trust? However, Israel has just experienced the Lord's power over the waters of the Red Sea, and thus their choice to grumble against Moses about the lack of something to drink, verse 24, is ironic. Hey, exactly. Have we not seen him have power over water? He turned the water in the Nile into blood and then took the blood back. He has powered over an entire sea. He can't fix this water? Goodness. The signs in Egypt confirmed Moses as the Lord's choice to lead Israel, and Israel needs to faithfully appropriate what has been revealed to them. See verses 25, 26. Chapter 15, verses 24 to 26. Grumbled. Though the people of Israel had just seen the power of the Lord unforgettably demonstrated, they nonetheless forget and failed to trust the Lord. In contrast to their unbelief, Moses cried to the Lord to deliver the people from their distress. The Lord showed him a law. In response to Moses' cry for help, the Lord intervenes by causing the water to become sweet. Although some have proposed a naturalistic explanation for this, it seems more likely that it was entirely the Lord's intervention. The Lord showed Moses what to do. The purpose of the event at Marah is made clear in verses 25a and 26. There, the Lord made for them a statute and tested them. The statute was to demonstrate by means of testing a principle, a rule, that if people will diligently listen to the voice of the Lord, he would graciously care for them as their healer. Come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. Chapter 15, verses 25 to 26. The statute calls Israel to give heed to all that he has commanded. For example, Passover, the feast of unleavened bread, and the consecration of the firstborn, and all that he will reveal further, which requires implicitly that the people follow Moses as the one through whom they will listen to the voice of the Lord. The Lord's reference to himself as your healer indicates that Israel has already been graciously spared from what happened to the Egyptians, and that faithfulness is the means by which they will continue to appropriate the blessings of the covenant relationship with the Lord. See chapter 23, verse 25, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 15. The statute given here is the seed of that which Moses will give the next generation of Israel before they enter the land. See Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 12 to 15. I will say this. Sometimes it is hard for us as Christians to understand this part, right? We don't do works in order to be saved. However, once we are saved and we accept this covenant relationship that we have with the Lord, right? There are conditional rewards and blessings that come with it, right? And he places this here, right? Condition, if you will listen to the voice of the Lord, then you will be rewarded. Then you will be blessed, right? And we'll see this later in like Deuteronomy chapter 28, Leviticus chapter 26, right? And we have that, right? You know, because of our covenant relationship with him, right? As we accept the sacrifice of his son, we enter into the covenant relationship, right? Now, again, this is not prosperity gospel preaching, right? Where, hey, if you would just, believe God and place a seed on the table, watch what he would do. No, we're not talking about that, right? I'm not over here promising mansions and Bentleys, right? However, God does reward faithfulness. I was talking to a brother at our church today, and he had talked to me a few days ago about issues that he's having in his marriage, right? But then I talked to him today, and I asked him about, hey, we are given certain responsibilities as husbands, right? Let's do a checklist, right? I often have to do this with myself, with my wife, right? Let's do the checklist. Hey, am I loving my wife as Christ loved the church? Am I watering her with the word as I'm commanded to? And am I being what's the terminology? First Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Am I being understanding towards her? Right? Am I loving her? Am I watering her with the word? And am I being understanding towards her? Right? And usually I would tell you this. Whenever there are issues in my marriage, I am missing at least one of the three. Right? And so it's like, hey, before we get to, oh, she needs to do this, right? Let me check me first. Right? And so, and we, we're having a discussion. I was like, hey, from what, in the middle of our discussion as we're talking, hey, it seems like you're doing 1 and 3, right? Let's figure out number 2, right? Watering her with the word. How are we doing that? And I was like, hey, just keep doing what you're doing, right? And you'll see the Lord blesses faithfulness, right? This is not what it says here. Faithfulness is the means by which they will continue to appropriate the blessings of the covenant relationship with the Lord. The Lord blesses faithfulness. All right, let's get to this last note. Chapter 15, verse 27, Elam. Cross-reference Numbers chapter 33, verse 9. Was perhaps an oasis in Wadi Garandel with its 12 springs and 70 palm trees. It signified to Israel once again that since the Lord is leading them, they should not conclude too quickly that they know the meaning of their circumstances, especially when they cannot see how the Lord will work on their behalf. For example, parting the Red Sea. Correct. All right. And I think this puts a nice bow on this first section, right? 12 sons of Israel come into Egypt, 70 in total. The Lord brings them out, brings them to the spring. Okay. All right, let's get to the verses. Let you guys get up out of here. No. All right. Here we go. All right, so we're in chapter 13 to 15. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 verses tonight. Chapter 13, verse 3. We now look back to the final Passover in which Christ brought eternal salvation from sin. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 7. And we remember it in the Lord's Supper. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 23 to 26. Chapter 14, verse 19. God's special presence in the cloud prefigures his presence in Christ, who is our protection and refuge against all the attacks of Satan. Chapter 14, verse 22. The people go down symbolically into death and come up alive, prefiguring the reception of resurrection life through Christ. See Romans chapter 6, verse 4, and 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 2. Chapter 14, verse 30. The death of Egyptians prefigures that final destruction of all God's enemies. Revelation chapter 20, verse 15, and chapter 21, verse 8. Chapter 15, verse 2. Praise for God's salvation anticipates the songs of praise for Christ's final work of salvation. Revelation chapter 5, verses 9 to 14, and chapter 15, verse 3. The conquest, chapter 15, verse 17. The conquest of Canaan prefigures the entrance into the final sanctuary of God's presence, mediated by Christ. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 19 and 20, and Revelation chapter 21, verse 22. I hope that this has blessed you, that this has raised your understanding of God's word, your understanding of who God is and how he works, your understanding and reminder of God's power and his faithfulness to continue to keep his promises, and how he rewards faithfulness, how he will bless your faithfulness. So remain faithful, continue to trust in the Lord. We pray this in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.